weekend?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, very nice to be back, yeah.
Taking any sights while you're out here?
Yeah, I've been told by the showrunner that he booked the wrong person. We should have booked my wife, apparently. She's not popular. So that kept my feet on the ground, so it's very nice.
Well, we're happy she dragged you along.
What?
We're happy she dragged you along with her. It's been amazing. We definitely have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to dive right in with early days. There was a time back in school, Stratton, am I pronouncing? Stratton.
Yeah.
There was a time when you were in school and you were getting involved. At what point between when you were starting out, when you were dabbling with performing, and by the time you made it to the Byfleet Players?
You've been researching me.
A little bit. These guys wouldn't come there if I didn't have a few things to discuss with you. So at what point before, leading up to the Byfleet Players, and you said to yourself, I think this is what I want to do. This is it.
Well, I was, as you say, I was born in Streatham, and then I think when I was 10 we moved out of London because my father had this crazy idea. He wanted to run a village shop, because he wanted to be centre of the community.
Clark.
I don't know why he wanted to do that. Anyway, so I went to school in Surrey, and at school I didn't really, apart from, I think a lot of people when they're young think, it'd be great to be in movies, but no more than that really, and that was a passing thing. And then when I went to high school, I got involved in the technical side, actually, more than anything else. And so I used to run the shows in terms of the lighting and curtains and things like that. Then the drama teacher said, why don't you come along and join the Amateur Dramatic Society, the Byfleet Players. So I did that, and then because I wasn't very good at school, didn't work very hard, I managed to fail all but one of my exams.
Almost
had it. I don't know what happened. Just, maybe you had to revise. I don't know. I didn't bother doing that. And then I was left with the option of getting just a job, a local job or something like that, or try for drama school because you didn't need any exams to do that. And I kind of was liking doing plays at the Byfleet Players. So I applied and I got in by the skin of my teeth, and that was where everything changed.
Blew up from there. Did you, and then it was Central Studio and Drama?
Central School of Speech and Drama, or we used to call it Central School of Speech and Trauma.
So talking about that, this is my impetus of this, we get into some of the...
I mean, they're the maddest things are drama schools. I know, because inevitably you have, in our year there were 30 people who were obviously very, very competitive because they were all young, all going to go out into this business, at the same age, all going up for the same part. So it was a difficult, and sometimes it was traumatic. Not so much the boys actually, more the girls. They would be very competitive with each other.
And your parents were supportive?
They were just desperately glad that I'd done something I wanted to do. Because I just seemed to have no ambition at all. As they said it, I was busy writing songs with my guitar.
Oh, we're getting into that.
Oh, well,
we are. So, but moving forward, then so you're at Central.
Yeah, Central, yeah.
By impetus of that, this is where you were discovered for All Creatures with the singer. Is that led to that?
I left drama school in '72, and I worked for a couple of years in repertory theatre around the country. And then I just went up for a part one day. I was actually working at a part-time job in the income tax office.
I was going to ask about the tax office.
Yeah, the tax office. Yeah, it was great.
Because they did at one point they did a This Is Your Life. You got to do This Is Your Life.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought out the tax guys.
That's right, because they were fantastic. I was out of work, and you were on sort of national assistance, you get the money from the government in the UK. and eventually they get tired of you getting money from them, and they say, go get a job. So I got this job in the income tax office, and because you were meant to have several exams to do the job that I was doing, but it was only a casual job, so I just lied about the exams I had.
As you do, yeah.
As you do, you just sort of say, yeah.
Well, Janet was telling me she lied to get the role.
Yeah, we lie about everything. I was always told you can lie about everything except being able to ride a horse.
That's true.
Don't do that because it's dangerous. So anyway, so I lied about the exams. I got a job in the income tax office, and I was quite good at it. And then they said to me one day, why don't you, actually become a permanent member of the tax office, and you can make your way up to tax inspector. And that appealed to me because we had lots of actors living in the area, and I knew exactly how much they earned.
You knew what to demand and who you can undercut.
So anyway, I thought, well, why not? I'll do that, become permanent, and work my way up, and I can always go back to acting later. Anyway, I filled in the form, and on the form it said, how many exams do you have, and produce the certificates. And of course I'd lied. So I had to go back in the next 30 exam. I've changed my mind, I really want to be an actor. And then miraculously, I got sent for a job. I had an audition about 3 weeks later. And that was actually not for All Creatures, that was for a series called Love for Lydia, which I thought was going to be my big break. And it was, I worked for about a year on that, making the series. And then just before I finished, I went up for another job. I thought, I was so convinced that Love for Lydia would be my break, that I barely considered this other part of the creature. So,
well, I mean, not quite. It's funny, it's Love for Lydia, right? Because you actually started out playing a space cowboy in an episode called A Man for Emily.
That's true, yes.
You played a space cowboy. That wasn't foretelling, wasn't it? For
was
tomorrow people.
Yeah, I was a space cowboy.
Yeah.
A very brief little part. I knew that was not going to be my break, so I glossed over that because the opening shot was me in a blonde curly wig and spandex sort of trunks or something. I don't know what the hell I was wearing. Not very much.
Stephen's looking for it, I'm sure.
And it was very, very embarrassing. You haven't got a picture of it.
That's where it all started, yeah.
Yeah. Years later, I did the commentary for the DVD with Nick, who's there.
Oh, really?
We had a good time. Actually, it was great fun to do. But we thought it was going to be a very, very funny story within the Tomorrow. Did anyone know the Tomorrow people? Yeah. But it's rather serious thing, really, where it's about these kids who can time jump or space jump or whatever it is. And this was a comedy story, and we thought it was going to go down really well with the fans. And we were hoping we'd come back for another story at some point. And it went out on the telly, and the children hated it because we were making fun of the whole idea of it. So anyway, so it didn't lead to my big break. Eventually, anyway, I got a big break with All Creatures, Great and Small.
And then Tristan was born.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. Now look at that. No.
You have no idea, incidentally, how much noise those little piglets are making. They are screaming their heads off because they don't want to be held by me.
And the household name was born. I have to ask, they've done the reboot, right? They're all new All Creatures. Have you seen it?
No. No, I haven't. It's a weird thing. I think it's very good, and obviously they have all the advantages of modern techniques and filming. We have this rather odd cross thing between video and film. Outside was film, inside was video. But we had an enormous fun making it, and we had vet advisors who would actually produce animals for us to cure. So, they in the script would say this dog had an abscess or something, and then the vet would turn up and say, "Oh, I found a dog with an abscess, so you can squeeze it on camera." And so we found ourselves doing really hands-on stuff. And so I've got a folder about to be born. You can help deliver it. So there was no dignity was spared.
Is that carried on with your life? Like, say you're somewhere with some friends and neighbors, and oh my God, the dog's sick. Get Peter.
No, people just assume people do believe that. People still ring me up and say, my dog's not very well, what do you think? And I go, I've got no idea, I was a TV vet. But they do think that you pick up, and you do pick up certain things. So I would never say I could treat a dog that was sick. Don't do it with a dog.
Has it got an abscess because I can squeeze
But honestly, that was the squeezing of this thing with Chris. Chris and I had to do it, this particular scene where we had to squeeze. And it was in a scene where I was telling him he should get out more and go out with some nurses for a date. And I was talking about these females with acres of female cockatoo, and they're lovely, and they're like, take them down for a drink, it'll be wonderful. And all the time Chris and I are squeezing the thing, and pus is coming out of this. It's absolutely terrible.
You couldn't use the Sonic to cure him?
Boy, am I learned a whole lot right now. So then,
Did the dog live?
Did the dog live?
Did the dog live?
Any
The dog,
animals?
yeah, no, we had a 100% record of curing the animals. I have to say, I think probably the vet did the rest of the job after we finished filming. But it was extraordinary. We felt quite proud of ourselves that we were doing this stuff, helping to cure animals. And also, he made the BBC pay for the treatment. So it was brilliant. So if you volunteered your dog to be treated by these two lunatic actors who knew nothing about animals, you also got them treated free.
Wow.
So if they died, you didn't have to bill anyway.
People find their way.
They did die. It was very good.
Now, you've worked with J&T, John Nathan Turner. You've worked with John Nathan Turner.
Oh, yes.
In that time.
In that series, yes, that's right.
And that's how.
Or TNT.
TNT.
And then obviously, when he's taken over the show, you got the call.
Yeah, I mean, he was on All Creatures for about maybe one season, and then he left to become the producer of Doctor Who. And we got on very well when we were doing the series, All Creatures. And I didn't think any more of it, really. We had a goodbye party for him, and he went off to be the producer. We finished 3 series of All Creatures, which at that time was going to be it. We were going to finish forever. And I was just sitting at home one evening, and he just rang me up out of the blue and said, hi. And I said, hi. And he said, how do you feel about being the next Doctor? And I was very silent. And I thought, I had no idea what he was talking about.
Another vet.
Yeah, that probably, yeah.
Another vet, yeah, possibly. Anyway, but then Tom Baker was obviously leaving, I discovered, and he took me out for lunch, got me drunk, and I said yes. I was going to ask lots of questions, because it was a difficult job to do. Tom had done it for 7 years, and he'd become completely identified with that character. I didn't want that to happen to me, so I was going to ask him all sorts of probing questions when he took me for lunch. It said, I said yes over the sticky toffee pudding.
Sticky toffee pudding, that's all it took.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, was it around this time, or was it, I think it might have been slightly before, that you were dabbling on the side with some music? And you actually would write, I believe with your first wife, a couple of tunes that ended up being title songs on TV series. Is that?
Yeah, I'd always written songs. I mean, the first song I never used to play them to anyone. I did send them to sort of A&R men at record companies, and one was very interested, but they offered me this diabolical songwriting contract where I had to write 8 songs a year that were acceptable to them. Which basically means you have no power at all. You could write 50 songs and they'll go, no, don't have to pay you. You haven't produced one that we like yet. So I said no to that. And then Dave Clark of the Dave Clark Fine was actually at our drama schools, but he was paying for lessons because he wanted to be an actor. And so he just joined now a year, although he was paying great fees to do so. And he just heard me singing this song, in a little youth club down the road one evening, and he said, I want to record it. So that was Officer McGurk. And I used to do this song, Officer McGurk, at conventions, funny enough. And I think there's a recording of that. I'm surprised you haven't found that.
Oh, he's working on it.
What's the name of it?
Officer McGurk. If you put Peter Davison, Officer McGurk, I think you'll probably find it'll come out as a thing on YouTube. This is exciting, isn't it?
It is.
You can find anything on YouTube.
Yeah, well,
You don't have any old rubbish on YouTube, including me.
Okay, well, as James is here, you're coming on, you're taking over the role. Castrovava,
Yeah.
Bidney.
That was Bidney, yes. This was Bidney, yes.
And, I'm just coming in on the J&T era, I think one of the things I love, and I believe it was a conscious decision, so you'll have to confirm that your approach to the Doctor was very much from a natural point of view, like more of a natural rather than alien performance, would you say?
I think that's probably true, yes. I mean, I don't think I consciously thought that, but I had really enjoyed, the first two Doctors, particularly William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. And there was something about Patrick Troughton's vulnerability which I wanted to bring back into the show. I hadn't really seen much of John Pertwee or Tom Baker, not because I didn't like them, simply because I was out, at drama school and working and things like that. So, but I felt that after Patrick, John lost a bit of the vulnerability. He was very much a sort of full-on macho James Bond figure, yeah. So I thought that the programme worked better when the Doctor was this slightly impetuous Time Lord that didn't always get things right, and that's when the companions used to come in and sort of sort the Doctor out. I still think that's the best way those things work.
And you did inherit some companions. You had more than one companion.
I know. Yes, I had 3 companions. I don't quite know why that was. I think John wanted to somehow protect me. I don't know. But all I know is that he said to me, well, you're a younger Doctor, so you can't put your arms around the girls. But you can put your arm around Adric.
And strangle him.
I thought, what? Sadly, it wasn't as much fun.
J&T.
Yeah.
Now the stories, though, I think in hindsight, I feel like from what I've learned, you don't think they actually kind of got it right until Cage of Atrazine, right? That was because of Graham Harper, of course.
No, it wasn't so much that they hadn't got it right.
Story.
It was just that I thought that Caves of Androzani marked a change in the way they made the programme. This was what was in British TV. British TV emerged from theatre much more than American. American TV emerged really from film. It was condensed down from film. Whereas we were dealing with people who still thought they were making theatre on television. So sometimes British television people would just sort of stand in lines and sort of say the lines, and then they'd sort of go, look, and then they cut to a door opening, and we just didn't feel quite right. Everyone it was a bit static. It wasn't moved around very much, and partly because we were in a video studio, so you were dealing with 4 or 5 cameras, and it was effectively edited as you recorded it, which is how they do the sitcoms. Yeah.
When I mentioned Castrovava, that's obviously the first one story, but it wasn't the first one shot, of course. That's the third one, the second one. Yes, it's Port of Doomsday.
It was Port of Doomsday was the first one, then Visitation, and then Castrovava.
Now, here you are, you're showing up on the first day of set on Port of Doomsday, okay? And it's your first time taking on the role. Oh, it also happens to be April 13th, 1981, the day you turn 30,
Yeah.
you take on the role of Dr. Who.
Yeah.
It was a lucky break. What a birthday! Seriously.
I can't remember if they got me a cake either. But yeah, it was a kind of significant day in many ways. And it was, you know, you just have to dive in with Doctor Who. You don't really know what you're doing. Because, you know, especially with Doctor Who, as I said, I was following Tom Baker, John Pertwee, Patrick Troughton, William Hartnell. I was completely different to all of them, but you've somehow got to find a character, so you just blindly go in and keep your fingers crossed, don't you? And eventually something emerges.
Yeah, but I did mention Graham Harper. Wow. And that was his first time you're actually directing for Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think I worked with him as a production first. But he just had a different take on it. So, you know, normally the director is up in what they call the gallery. And they couldn't get Graham to go up in the gallery. He was always on the floor. He was always on the set. So and he would just move the camera. And so there were times when I thought, is this going to work? And then he swept us all up in this idea that this was just a different way of doing things. Right? And you know, I'm sure he wasn't the first director to do that on television, but he was the first director of Doctor Who that did it like that. And I think it changed the way that the show was made.
And what a way to go out, of course. And this time you had lost all the companions. You had a Nicola Bryant with you playing Perry for the Planning Fire and the Caves. Now, but at JNT, at that point, this is where you've said this from what I've read, that you felt like he wasn't quite the producer who was good with not so much developing science fiction stories, where he was more of a publicist. Do you think that helped or hindered the show in hindsight?
He wanted. I remain friends with him. I want to stress that because people, when I talk about these things, people think we fell out. We never fell out at all, John Nathan Turner and I. But we had different thoughts about it. So I thought the most important thing was the casting and the scripts. And John was very keen on just getting well-known faces in, regardless of. So he'd come up with some suggestion, terrible suggestion, and then come back to me and go, "Oh, I'm afraid that hasn't worked out." And I go, secretly to myself, I go, "Thank God for that." And so he would always choose that, I think, over. He wasn't really keen on science fiction. He was great at getting publicity for the show. I never met anyone who got as much publicity for a show as he did. But his interest was really in just loud. You always go for the loud option over the subtle.
The bombastic. But yeah, there are still great stories throughout your era. Great stories throughout your era. I talked to Janet about this too. In my experience with different shoots that I've done, sometimes you look back and it comes out as something, okay, that was really good. And then sometimes you look back on something being really good because not how it turned out, but the experience of shooting it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure there's a story that worked for you and just how it came all out together when it was finally aired. But there's got to be ones that are like, well, it was actually had a better experience because of shooting this one.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not quite sure that I understand, but for example, Time Flight, which actually was quite a good script, but we ran out of budget completely. So we were literally doing it inside Studio 8 with little models of Concorde, which we had to pretend was actually Concorde, a good way away. But the cast was such brilliant fun, and we just had the greatest time.